To our FY 2026 budget retreat. This, I believe, is one of the earliest times that we've had this type of gathering to discuss the next year's fiscal year budget process, and that's intentional. A lot of the feedback that we've gotten from our colleagues and from others is around trying to ensure that we have enough time to fully vet a lot of the really tough decisions that have to be made that go into the budget process, which in many ways helps set us up for success, but also ensure that we have a pretty accurate budget that doesn't require as many amendments throughout the year. And so the good news is that by starting now, we're really going to outline some of the changes ahead that'll set up some new structures to give the commission, other elected officials, the public, more opportunity to fully vet the process. And Budget Chairwoman Clay Bibbs will go through that today. But just wanted to set that out that we're not going to, today is not about accomplishing the details of the fiscal year 26 budget, but it's about outlining what the process will look like and also answering any questions from other commissioners around maybe other components that we can ensure that we fit in starting with some of these meetings that we'll have in the beginning of next calendar year. So with that, I'll turn it over to our budget chairwoman, who was really instrumental in executing this strategy. So very thankful for that and your leadership here on the budget. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chairman Whaley. What I will do is one quick housekeeping thing. When you come to speak, for those, if you come to the mic, you don't have to push anything. Just speak directly into the mic, but just be mindful that side conversations can be heard via the microphone. So just make sure if you have something to say that you are saying it away from the microphone, because we do have a listening audience this morning. So thank you so much, Chairman Whaley. I am excited that we have such a good turnout to be here on a Saturday in the month of December, right in the mid-holiday season. Do want to acknowledge the fact that I do have one colleague in particular who's not here because his holiday event is happening probably right now or getting ready to happen as we speak. So again, so thank you to those who showed up. As Chairman Whaley stated, this is more talking about our process that we're going to enter into this budget cycle. So those electeds or representations of those electeds that are here, this is really us talking through how we're going to do the schedule, how we're going to do the process, and also just what you can expect around receiving communication from us when it is your time to come before the body. So thank you so much. Another goal that I have today is making sure that we stay on time and on task, because I recognize it's a Saturday and I would love to be able to give some time back to you. One quick thing, because I want to do this at the top of the hour, before we get down into the weeds, do want to acknowledge that it's Chairman Pro Tem's birthday today, so she's spending some time with us on her birthday. So definitely, if you can, please give me her a round of applause for happy birthday to Commissioner Shantae Agan. And there's something very special for her in the back. Oh. All right. At this time, we're going to bring up our budget director, Michael Thompson. He is going to come and talk about Budget 101.
Madam Chair, real quick.
I'm sorry?
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't look like I got to leave early, even though I do have to leave early. I just wanted to make sure, and you don't have to worry about a lot of Q&A from me because I won't be here. I already let the chair know the reasoning and everything else because there are some things I'm doing with one of the council women in Orange Mound. I wanted to make sure I had the information. So 2 reasons why I'm here: to get the information that I can before I leave, and to give somebody that's here some paperwork that they need to go get from the Daily Memphian. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Ford. You can come right here to the middle because you do also are being shown on live. Not only we are definitely on 88.5, but they also can see us live stream.
Main event. You're the main event.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone here today.
Good to be seen.
The Budget 101 says Q&A, right? So I want to keep this simple and to the point and be able to answer any questions that you all may have.
Just afterwards. You're supposed to talk about your process. Then you have opportunity to ask.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Right. Well, I was leading to say budgets are simple. And if you all have a pad in front of you, I want you to write down something. Write down recurring revenues. Recurring revenues. That is our primary source of funding for our recurring expenditures. The key word is recurring. Recurring revenues and recurring expenditures. And this is almost like a math equation. If you draw a line under recurring revenues and recurring expenditures, you either have a net deficit or a net surplus. Let's talk about how we get there. If your recurring revenues exceed your recurring expenditures, you can replenish fund balance. If your recurring revenues do not exceed your recurring expenditures, you potentially have to use fund balance. And based upon where we are in Shelby County today, we need to begin to think about how do we budget our recurring revenues to cover our recurring expenditures such that we net to zero or we begin to replenish fund balance. It means we have to tighten our belts. Otherwise, we will continue to see a planned use of fund balance in our annual budget, which would further potentially push us outside of our policy limits. I think that is the main message and the focus that we must take into this FY26 budget season. We all know the demands put on all of our offices. We all know the wishes, wants, and desires of our electeds. But at the end of the day, we have recurring revenues to cover recurring expenditures. That is the basis of sound budgeting. I'm open for questions.
I got a question. As of the end of last fiscal year, where were we, since you mentioned unassigned fund balance multiple times, where were we dollar amount and percentage-wise?
As we have often been asked that question, and our response remains the same. We are currently completing our FY24 annual audit. At that point, the auditors will certify our audit and provide us with actually where we landed for FY24.
Do you have
Preliminary-
go ahead. No, finish up.
Preliminarily, we are slightly below our policy.
Will we adhere to the timeline that the state has asked us, the December 31st timeline, so that we can get the ACFR timely to represent the audited results that you just mentioned?
That is a question, and I can answer it this way. We have our auditors in-house every day going through the audit, and we can continue to update you all with an expected completion.
And my last question, when were we in compliance last with our unassigned fund balance policy? I know the answer to that. I just want to see if you, Mr. Budget Director, know.
You know, that's a
It was
great question.
before you, so it's sort of a semi-trick question.
That's a great question. And, you know, when I think about the audits and I think about the fund balance, I think we have always been on the lower side of our policy and sometimes below, going back many fiscal years.
It was 2021, end of the fiscal year, at 22% and almost $100 million. That's my last question. Thank you.
That was a statement.
Well, that was my last question to you, and I just gave the answer to the question you didn't know the answer to. Thank you.
Thank you, Budget Director Thompson, Commissioner Ford. To the listening audience, I also think this is an opportunity to remind them, because we do have electeds in here, I think to remind them exactly what is the county budget? What does it entail? What are the things that we are responsible for? Because I think oftentimes, community will come out and ask us, can we do X, Y, and Z? But they don't really understand what the county budget is. Can you give them a brief synopsis of that?
Absolutely, and I will frame it in the sense of the departments that fall under the administration and the elected officials that govern our court systems, our law enforcement, our county clerk who covers all of our tags and marriage licenses, our circuit court clerk, which is also a part of the court system. So when we think about what we provide a means for all of our citizens to fully engage in a life within Shelby County. And that goes from community services, all of our social service needs that our community has. That goes with planning and development, run by John Zena, who is integral in laying the pathwork for a successful economic development process here in the county. Of course, we have our Natural Human Resources Department. We have Administration of Finance. So we have several departments that deal with the basic services that all of our citizens need. When it comes to the elected officials, we have our trustee, who's our main person for collecting the property taxes. We have the assessor who assesses the property. As I mentioned before, the county clerk. We have the register, who is very integral in recording deeds, et cetera. So all of these departments and divisions of the administration come together to provide everything that a citizen would need to live a safe, happy, and effective life in Shelby County.
Thank you so much. I do think that Clerk Halbert has a question.
Actually, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to ask if you could repeat the statement that started with, if revenues exceed expenditures. I didn't capture the rest of that.
And let's make sure we use the word recurring, right? Because we do have non-recurring revenues, such as the planned use of fund balance. But the statement is, if your recurring expenditures exceed your recurring revenues, you have a net deficit. So you would have to find additional funding to balance your budget. And that's a challenge that we have faced in Shelby County.
Okay, thank you. CAO Lindsay has a question.
And Chief Administrative Officer, Shelby County Sheriff's Office, and I have a question, and I'm going to preface it with previous experience in the Shelby County Budget Department and being the CFO of Shelby County Schools. So typically, when there's a budget process, you have a proposed budget, then you have adjustments, and then you have a final budget that's adopted. So by the end of the night, when a budget is adopted, each department walks away knowing what their budget is. So last budget season, we ended the night at about 3:00 in the morning, and we walked away thinking our budget was one thing, but when it was loaded into the financial system, it was something else. So basically, surrounding processes and accuracy of the upcoming budget, I'd just like to know what guards are going to be put in place to ensure that when that budget is adopted, it balances to the adopted budget resolution, and each department knows what their budget is when they leave for the night. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Lindsay. As I look at the information that's going to be shared, and I look at the number of budget subcommittee meetings that are planned for this year, I think those are some of the things that will help us understand what everyone's budget will be well in advance of a 3:00 meeting ending. It's very challenging to go deep into the night as we work to iron out everyone's budgets and everyone's wishes and wants. But I think with the process that Budget Chairwoman, Ms. Blias will put in place, I think this will definitely help us to come to a more sound meeting so that it doesn't go to 3:00 and everyone will know exactly where they will stand.
Let's see, are the mics all on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you don't have to push anything, just speak in.
Okay, I think you said that. to that point, I would just emphasize for us commissioners and to the administration that our charter responsibilities in the budget are really strictly around education, and then our health care, and then our jails and criminal justice system. And that those are our primary, where we have to focus first as bare bones. And then, there's so many wants and needs, and I feel like Shelby County has largely gotten out of its lane with a lot of the extra grants, not the federal through state grants, but the extra ones. And so I would just, as you know, I support transit, which is somewhat out of our lane, but that's because it's a regional, I'm hoping one day will be more of a regional asset for us. But given that our population growth has not occurred just yet, our recurring revenue is likely not increasing either. And so I think it's important for us to realize that we can't grow government without that population growth and growth of revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morrison. Any additional comments, questions, statements about this section?
Are we going to the next session if there's nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all go ahead.
Okay. All right, then. At this time, we're going to have our budget consultant, Lynn Johnson, to come up, and he is going to kind of go over his process in working with commissioners.
Good morning, everyone. For everyone in the viewing audience and for all the commissioners as well, I'm Lynn Johnson. I'm serving as Shelby County's budget advisor as well. I will kind of highlight the three components and what that looks like in terms of helping the commission. There's really three key things around in which I will be helping the commission with. One is around the budget development support. The second is around some key priorities as it relates to the budget. And the third is really providing each commissioner with some individualized consultation. The bulk of the time actually will be for the budget development support. About 40% of that time will actually be concentrated on that. Part of that would include doing financial budget analysis and supports throughout the full budget process. Similar to today, you will see me attend and participate in key meetings that will happen. The next key meeting that I'll be a part of will be the January 15th meeting, which will be the first budget subcommittee meeting. And then also reviewing materials that are presented throughout the budget process and providing guidance and insight. The second is serving as the lead financial advisor for Chairwoman Clay Bibbs as well, and for the Chief Administrative Office Administrator for the county as well, providing a level of in-depth analysis, particularly around major capital projects, particularly as we think about Memphis, Shelby County schools, their facilities, and evaluating, revenue scenarios, benchmarking expenses, and then even recommending any possible cost savings that might exist. And the last is around providing the consultation support that I talked about as well. So there will be at least 10 hours a month that I'll be able to provide individual consultation for each commissioner. And that's roughly is about an hour per commissioner as well per month. I will be sending out times and blocks for that starting in January, and that will continue on to the end of the budget period as well. If there are new commissioners that come on board, I'll ensure that there's orientation around the budget process. And then I'll make sure that as part of this meeting, kind of providing briefings as well on matters that relates to the budget as well. Are there any questions?
You don't want to say nothing?
I do want to say too before, well, first is there a question?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I do want to make sure that, Mr. Johnson, that you also make them aware of the best way to contact you, because I do think that that's really important around like the best way to communicate with you and how the best way for you to be able to respond.
Yeah. The best way to communicate with me is by email, and I'll ensure after this meeting that everyone has my email. That is the best way to actually reach me. And what you can expect is a response within no less than 48 hours of getting a response when you send me an email by email.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ford.
Just so for the record, and I've worked with you before, I know you're fully competent to do the job. My question is, so I know we haven't gotten to this, but this aforementioned budget schedule, you're saying that you will be accessible for all these dates and other dates for the purposes of a budget being passed within the timeline that we're required to by state law. The reason why I'm asking is because I know when you came on, but I know you weren't physically present when we all adjourned at 3 a.m. and we might have gotten out at 2:45 a.m. if you were there or whatever the case may be. So for the record, you're saying you will be physically and easily accessible through this entire process, yes or no?
Yeah, that's right, Commissioner Ford. And already having that schedule allows me to plan an event. So yes.
And I'm asking for others because this will be my 18th budget I'm looking at, so I just want to see, because I might have to ask you a question or two or five, but I'm just asking because there's 12 other people in this body, and I just want to make sure that if we do have you on the payroll, that you're accessible and you're not just getting a check. You're fully, again, I said, you're fully competent in doing the job. I've seen your work. So I just want to make sure that you're physically and easily accessible throughout the process. And I think that's a very fair question and statement.
It's fair. So that is my expectation. Yes.
All right.
And that will begin, it's beginning today, and it'll continue throughout the budget process.
Okay. I quit looking at y'all clock when I'm about to leave. I see some of y'all looking at your clock. I'm leaving in 5 minutes. So y'all can stop looking at when I'm about to leave.
All right. Well, we're actually very much ahead of schedule. Thank you very much. So our next person that we have up is, thank you, Mr. Johnson, Attorney Janika White, who is actually our Shelby County Board Commission attorney. She's going to come up and talk about the legal process of what it means to prepare for budget season and how to get things through all of the proper channels so that we can be very clear on the process. It's just one.
Good morning, everyone. Janika White. So going through the permanent rules, first we have here, I believe this is the first time using subcommittees, which in this instance can be very beneficial to be able to work out some of those details before things come to the committee, and of course, before we get to that really, really tight time before budget. And one of the things that I was asked to speak about was the process. And so, of course, when you're going through and let me be clear about this. We're talking about with agenda change, amendments and those things, resolutions and ordinances. And so one thing that's been coming up is making sure that resolutions and ordinances that are brought before the body have been properly vetted. And the permanent rules require that those items go through legal as well as financial before making it to the agenda. Of course, you all have the discretion to be able to suspend the permanent rules, by 2/3 vote. But really, when you do that, what it does is sometimes it can cause, or it does cause, some confusion as to where these things may come from, especially if they require an expenditure. But even going back to legal, you want to make sure that these documents come through the county attorney's office or through me. Some of you all send resolutions and ordinances to me to be properly vetted as to form, but as well as to legality. And that's what the rules of procedure require, meaning that those ordinances and resolutions have been gone through the process of the attorney looking to see if they conflict with any other laws, whether or not we can do it, whether or not it will be upheld as constitutional. And of course, you all are able to move forward however you all decide, but it's supposed to go through legal pursuant to the permanent rules. Additionally, in terms of finance, it's important that they go through the proper vetting process, and in the rules, it's required that the county attorney's office send the resolution or ordinance to finance to be approved in the budget. And one rule that I wanted to point out is rule number 26, and it's unbudgeted expenditures. And you all's permanent rules require that any item requiring an unbudgeted expenditure shall not be voted on without having first been referred to the Budget Committee for a recommendation to the County Commission. And so that's why I think this subcommittee is going to be very important so that you all can discuss the items that you want to make sure that are budgeted for in this upcoming budget, because once these items make it to finance, if it's not already been assigned or if it's not already been budgeted for, then that's assumed that it's going to come out of fund balance. And that means that we end up with issues in the end because you're basically spending from your reserves. And so you just want to make sure that you use those subcommittees to really discuss the items that you may want, make sure that those items are budgeted for, keeping in mind that when they go through finance, if it's not already budgeted for, pursuant to you all's rules, it's really supposed to go through the Budget Committee if there's a budget amendment. Any questions?
Any questions? Commissioner Wright?
I guess I would ask about, is there any sort of timeline that we expect legal and financial review to take place?
One has not been established, but the chair can establish one. I think right now it's typically, when I talk to Marcy, Attorney Ingram, it seems that you all have been kind of working on an ongoing basis. When I receive documents from the commissioners, I'll ask them. Some of the commissioners will give me the timeline, but I would say at least 2 weeks for finance, and maybe can you speak to what's good for you all in terms of time to be able to go through those ordinances, resolutions, and determine whether or not they can be approved pursuant to finance?
Yes, Michael Thompson, Director of Budget and Fiscal Planning. We prepare a calendar that is actually online and shared with everyone to give the dates of what we call a on-base submission. So we go through a process, and it's at least 3 to 4 weeks prior. It goes through finance, it goes through legal, then it goes into on-base. And so that calendar can be shared, and I think it's actually online as well. But it's like a 3 to 4 week process where the items are prepared, submitted, and forwarded on and loaded into on-base in order to get on the agenda.
As we prepare for this budget season, Director Thompson, can you email that out again as a reminder? Although it may be online, I do think I appreciate when we over-communicate versus saying, oh, go find something online. So can you please share that out again?
Absolutely.
So we can be prepared for that in that way.
Yes, happy to.
Budget Chair, could we also request a summary of these subcommittee meetings be sent around to the commissioners? So after each subcommittee, whatever the ask was, or just a summary for the commissioners of the subcommittee meetings.
All right, thank you. Noted. Any additional questions for Attorney White? CEO Inderogaro.
Jessica Indengaro, CAO of the DA's office. I understand the on-base process, but my experience has been that when we are seeking review of resolutions, that the process also includes basically, maybe it's a preliminary approval, but we circulate it to legal and finance prior to submitting anything in on-base. So the on-base process, in my experience, has been more of a pro forma approval based on the negotiations and approval from finance and legal prior to the on-base entry. And so I suspect that that's part of why the commission does see requests for add-ons and things like that, because if we get hung up in the earlier space of approval, we miss on-base deadlines. So that the on-base process is really for things that are ready to go, as opposed to the nitty-gritty of how are we going to get through this through finance and legal.
Director Thompson.
Michael Thompson, Director of Budget and Fiscal Planning. CAO Indegaro makes a good point. If finance receives a resolution to spend X amount of fund balance or to utilize funding or something of that nature, we can approve it or we could not approve it based upon the fiscal nature of that item. If we see that the fiscal nature of that item has a negative impact, we will generally not approve it. And that is also a reason that you may also receive resolutions coming to you as add-ons or substitutes, is because we may have seen it, but we cannot approve some items if we calculate the fiscal impact and it is detrimental to our government.
I'm going to go to CEO Lindsay, then to you, Clerk Haver.
Alicia Lindsay, Chief Administrative Officer, Shelby County Sheriff's Office. I have a couple of questions, please. So the first question revolves around resolutions and budget transfer review. Typically, what is the turnaround time for the administration to review both resolutions and budget transfers?
The resolution review is based strictly upon the calendar that I will provide to everyone after this meeting.
So, Director Thompson, I'm aware of the calendar, but once finance receives a budget transfer or a resolution, typically what is the turnaround time? Is it 2 business days, 5 business days?
We should separate the budget resolution question from the budget transfer question. The budget resolution question is strictly based upon the calendar that will be provided. As far as budget transfers are concerned, we have a normal and customary 5 to 7 day turnaround on budget transfers.
Okay, thank you. I'll consult the calendar. The next question is for Attorney White. As it relates to permanent rules, is there anything in the permanent rules that require the pre-on-base review that finance and legal does?
You said,
Is there anything in permanent rules that requires the pre or preliminary on-base review by both legal and finance?
no.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ford. I'm sorry.
No,
gonna-
you had somebody before me. No,
Clerk Howard.
go ahead, clerk. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I appreciate what you were saying on that, and I'm glad that you're that person that can be the buffer when it deals with legal. But I'm going to simply say this. There is no consistency that I have seen to where there could be a process in place as far as if a commissioner or a clerk or whoever wants to bring an item. And I give several examples from, Chair, when you weren't here, with our 6,292 items we had on Wednesday plus some on Monday. There were a lot of items where it said the item does not meet permanent rules. But the inconsistency comes in to where there were clerks and a few commissioners that have gone through the timeline process that has been given to us through the calendar that was voted on and everything else, to where they would still get either a roadblock from finance or a roadblock from legal or both, and they were trying to get the process in place, and then it would come down, item does not meet permanent rules. And then the question would be why and all of that. But at the same time, we would see a multitude of add-ons, which you would assume did not make deadlines, but they made the legal and the financial review. So let's just put it all out there. I mean, if politics is being involved, it is to a degree. But at the same time, if we're going to go forward, we need to make sure that we have a process to where if a commissioner is having something challenging regarding the legal piece, then what can you do to help us on that so that that can be checked off? Where's Lynn Johnson at? Since he said he's going to be around. If there's something that we're having a roadblock on regarding the financial piece, we would hope that you would be able to help us with that, because, again, those inconsistencies are ones that I do not want to see that keep happening. I'm not going to go through all the examples, but for just one example, you had an item where all the clerks 2 months in advance had an item that came up and it did not follow supposedly the permanent rules, but legal had it for 2 months, and finance, well, it was basically one of those, anytime you had a clerk, and Clerk Howard, this happened so many times on Wednesday, you had a clerk that sat in the middle, and you had your budget director and your and your HR director that would race into the chairs just to say no, 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 no. So hopefully, as we go forward through this process, because this is part of the process that you've outlined, because there will be more clerks that will probably be coming, and I've already said this on record, and I'll close on this so I can go to my other appointments, is that this commissioner, to go with what you said, budget director, because you said recurring money is much better, so we won't have structural imbalances in our budget. Anything after this month, if a clerk comes down or whoever, and it does require fund balance, I'm going to be a no. So hopefully we can go ahead and get the slate clean and start working on recurring revenues, or something that some people don't like seeing, and that's called cuts. We've done that before, haven't we, colleagues? So that might be something that we might have to do as well. So with that being said, I just want to get that last piece out. Chair, you got what I gave you, and I'm about to take care of this. So y'all have a good rest of the budget retreat.
Well,
Sorry.
what I was
Commissioner
gonna
Wright.
say,
Well, before we go to you, Commissioner Wright, let me go to Clerk Halbert. Thank you, Commissioner Ford. Clerk Halbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was answered. My question was answered.
I think if
Oh.
you want to be sure to, okay, sorry,
It was answered.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wright.
Oh, well, I didn't want to get in front of Ms. White, but yeah, I guess just perhaps as a suggestion would be, because as commissioners, we only see whether or not it was approved. We don't necessarily know why. And so I have worked with some of the departments that have spoken up so there's been a number of occasions where they've encountered barriers, or at least perceived to have encountered barriers. And then when it gets to us, we know what it says. It's not been approved, but we don't know why, or we don't know why it doesn't meet the rules. So perhaps there would be some way to help all parties by maybe giving finance or legal some sort of line or some sort of memo to attach to explain why something is stated that way.
great point, Commissioner Wright. And I was gonna, before Commissioner Ford left, I was gonna say that's why I was really excited to hear that you all were having this budget retreat, so that we could talk about and discuss some of the things that aren't going well, because that's what you have to do. You have to monitor and you have to pivot and adjust. And so I think it's really good that you all attended today to say these are the obstacles that we've incurred, and so now we can figure out solutions. And of course, you all know your options. You have an amazing chair, and that's something that Chairman Whaley can implement as an internal process. But you all also have the authority to change your permanent rules to add these requirements. So if these are roadblocks that are coming up, you all can discuss it with me or Attorney Ingram, and we can figure out how to put those requirements in here to address some of the issues that you all have encountered.
Commissioner Sugarman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this is to the chair. And we have mentioned before about a process audit, and this is exactly why I think it's not only just for internal purposes, but to see where the barriers are so that we can adjust it. It should be an outside individual. And I brought this resolution before this commission few times. And then also, I will be bringing something to the rules, and I hope every time it seems like I bring something to the commission, it gets blocked. Either at committee meetings, for example, some of the things I brought forth as far as changing the permanent rules, then all of a sudden went to the committee never met, and things of that nature. And many times, I can understand what the clerks are saying, as well as the sheriff's department, because you're not alone. And we have commissioners, and I have receipts where months in advance I have given things and it's taken that long, and I'm on the commission. So I do understand. And so I think that it would behoove everybody if we could have a process audit. Thank you.
All right, CAO Lindsay.
Alicia Lindsay, Chief Administrative Officer, Shelby County Sheriff's Office. I have a couple of questions regarding salary restriction to Attorney White. Does any other county in the state of Tennessee have salary restriction?
That's something I would have to research for you.
Okay. Second question is, there is a clause in the budget.
Upon the chairman asking me to.
So in the budget resolution, there is a clause that speaks about the allocation of restrictions. So as it relates to the sheriff's office, it's the only office I can speak about. So when we were in the budget process, we went into the proposed budget and the night of the adopted budget with a salary restriction of $32 million. At the end of the night, it ended up being, well, when it was loaded into the system, it became $44 million. So somewhere between the proposed budget and the budget being adopted, we were hit with this an additional amount in salary restriction. But I think that clause speaks to if there's a total restriction, then it should be allocated, right? So everyone should know what that total restriction is and how it's going to be allocated. So I just hope that this body will look at that, one, whether any other county in the state of Tennessee has a salary restriction that's used like we use in Shelby County, and two, pay close attention to that clause and what it really means. Thank you.
Could you tell me what clause it is you're referring to?
There's a be it further resolved clause, and I'll be more than happy to send it to you. I don't have it with me right now.
Please do. Thank you.
All right, I'm trying to take a survey around the room. I don't see any additional questions.
Could I-
Commissioner Wright? Okay.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I did have a question. I don't know if now is the exact best time for it, but Commissioner Sugarman in the last, we joined Commissioner Sugarman in the last year to adopt a requirement, or I think it was a requirement, if not a request, for a line item budget to be submitted. And so I was going to ask on the status of that. Is that something that we're still expecting or requiring of the budget, and would that come by that April 30th date, or do we know?
You're saying for the new, for the FY26 proposed budget, for that to be, I think that is a question that Director Thompson needs to address, but I do know that Commissioner Sugarman has asked for that several times, and the goal was for this one to reflect that.
Michael Thompson, Director in Budget and Fiscal Planning. We are happy to provide a line item budget for you all. It can be prepared by department or consolidated, but it can be a line item so that you see the contents of the budget. Happy to provide.
All right, I think two questions, then I'm going to follow up in my line of thinking. So are you saying you're going to provide that for the current budget as well as for the FY26 budget when it's proposed to us?
What would the body desire?
I think the statement or the question or the concern, all three, is for both.
Okay, as far as the current budget, I would need to work with you all as far as the date that can be provided, because that is a special request. And we do have quite a few things going on in-house right now, that being an ERP implementation. So if we can work to determine a delivery date, I think that would be great.
All right. Chairman Wiley.
All right, thank you, Madam Budget Chair. Just wanted to quickly synthesize, I think, some of the commentary that we've heard, both from commissioners and from other officials in county government, is one of the major goals I have just simply comes down to the concept of 100% clarity. That often lack of clarity in many of what I'm hearing is a challenge of either consistency, clarity, understanding. So my hope is little by little, we can find more clarity in the process. So I agree with Commissioner Sugarman. I mean, I think the more we can find efficient processes, the better. But ultimately, we need to be clear about what's in front of us and what the process is. And I think that goes, I mean, it goes for everyone because we need to have a clear understanding of how we allocate all of the revenues, how they come in from different individual elected officials, but they then have to be allocated beyond just those offices in how we make budget amendment decisions and all of that. So the more we can get clarity, I think the better. The process that Chairwoman Clay Bibbs is about to go over, I think, should help us seek that, particularly in the budget process, which is what today is all about, by having the additional space and time to fully vet some of these things so that we can ensure that we have clarity on things like the salary restriction so that whether, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get up to a point where 100% of people agree 100% of the time, but what we can get to is being clear about what it is. My expectation is that we can get there. But just wanted to lend support to this concept of the more we can suggest things to get clarity on, I think the better. One new process we're having is like recaps of the meetings, so we're clear about what happened in the meetings just among ourselves, but then, which will be a public document. But also I think to the question, Commissioner Morrison, I think you maybe brought it up, but even in the subcommittees, like here's what happened, because you shouldn't be expected to have to attend every single time. And it's not always going to be the case that we have to meet every single time. It's only if there are items we're not just going to meet. That's not happening. But if we have substance to discuss and it's going to move us toward a smooth budget adoption, we're going to take that time. So just wanted to chime in there on that. So thank you, Madam Budget Chair.
Commissioner Sugarman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to also include special call meetings to recap what happened, the outcomes, expectations, et cetera, because many times some of us cannot attend those meetings, and I'm having to ask secondhand. If you can just have, like, for example, something shared among all the commissioners, the outcomes, I'd appreciate, like the one on Monday.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and Rashad has done a great job of putting that together, so we'll be able to, certainly do that. Yep.
I think I'm surveying the room. I don't think there are any questions, comments for Attorney White. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is a great room today. I'm gonna be able to give back time. I'm excited. All right, we're now at the point of everyone should have a copy of the subcommittee schedule. And this is what Chairman Whaley was referring to around making sure that you have this on your calendars as tentative around when you can come. But the key thing that I think that I'm want to encourage around your thinking is we're not just going to meet, but these are the block times that when if we want to discuss and need to discuss a budget item, it must come during this budget process. It must come through subcommittee first before it makes it to the actual budget committee on the regular Wednesday. So we are kicking off January 15th, the budget cycle altogether. You will have presentations from Shelby County trustee and Ms. Newman and Shelby County assessor, Mr. Burgess. They're going to be doing their presentations. So as to give us all the information of well, we know where our numbers are, we know what we're thinking in order to go into the budget cycle. Then the dates are in order: January, February, March, April, May, and June. And you could see by each one the expectation. The number one I will say is April 16th, where there's been a lot of conversation around compensation policy, the preliminary FY26 Memphis Shelby County Schools budget presentation, and the job study. That is, I want to hone in on that date because we've had a lot of conversation about those three things. The expectation is that on April 16th, during that budget subcommittee, those things will happen. Then if we move forward to April 30th, that's the mayor's proposed FY26 budget presentation to the commission. And then May 5th, the proposed FY26 budget delivered to the commission again with the first reading of the tax ordinance, and that's on Monday, May 5th. And as you can see, it follows through each action, so no one can say they didn't know when. It is right in front of you. I do want to just double down on these subcommittee dates. The key thing is making sure you bring that item in subcommittee before it makes it to the actual budget committee regular agenda. That's important because Chairman Whaley has always stated that that's where we want to hash out kind of a lot of back and forth that we've been having in committee that's taking hours. We want to be able to give space to that in a way so you can hear feedback so that it can actually make it to committee in a way in which it makes sense for people are able to vote it up or down. So that's the whole point of the subcommittee. I do see someone standing with a question. Please state your name.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I just chime in really quickly, just to provide some more clarity on this process? Just wanted to go over the mechanics of how this works. So we, of course, have regular committee days. We have regular budget committee, and now we are constituting a budget subcommittee per our permanent rules. So items can move back and forth, okay, between budget committee and budget subcommittee. This becomes really important after the proposed budget is delivered. Because if you recall, in previous years, we've had really long budget and finance committees, mainly because of deliberating amendments to the new fiscal year budget. That happens in committee, happens in commission. It leads to these really long meetings, which we're trying to avoid by having a more efficient process here. So they become really key once we have the proposed budget, because the idea is that we're deliberating that budget and any amendments in the subcommittee, not on the regular committee day, because we still have to run county government. We still have many items that come through regular committee that we need to make sure we address. This is a way to take that out of the regular committee day until it is fully vetted, and then we refer it to committee from subcommittee, and then we can send it back. So just so that everyone's aware of how that works, so that ultimately it goes up from subcommittee to committee to commission to vote on an adopted budget.
Thank you for the clarity. Yes, ma'am. State your name for the
Adrian
record.
Daly Evans. I'm with the Sheriff's Office Financial Administrator. This question is directed to Director Thomas and the entire body of the commissions and the other elected officials. I've been in various offices throughout Shelby County, from the courts through the Register of Deeds office, juvenile court, and now I'm with the Sheriff Department. One of the things that I'm finding, I'm not sure whether it's just a unique situation or that as we look at the ERP system or whatever system we're using, Director Thomas, do we have a tool now for this budget period where we can get salary restriction information for each office prior to the budget process? Because normally, from my experience, historically, for about years, that doesn't happen to the budget period. And that holds up a lot of the discussions in offices completing their budget because we don't have a tool. Now, what my experience, I had to go back 3 years and calculate, based on the information I had, my restricted salaries and what it should be as far as meeting the restricted salary. So do we have a tool for that yet? If we do, that would actually expedite the budget process, not only for the elected officials, but also for the county commission.
Michael Thompson, Director of Budget and Fiscal Planning. That question is kind of twofold. From a department perspective, each department has a budget line item where they can see their salary restriction. And it is up to that department to monitor whether they are in line with meeting or exceeding that restriction, but to also understand their normal attrition. And so the department can perform the analysis to calculate their normal attrition and compare that to what their restricted salary is to understand if they think that there should be an adjustment. From the budget side, we do the same. We look at normal attrition and we look at their ability to have a salary restriction based upon that. So it's more of a calculation. There's not a tool yet, because as we are moving toward the new ERP system, I am working with the developers to develop a percentage calculation that is based upon your entire compensation for your department. So yes, I think we are moving toward that tool, so that independent analyses done by the department and budget can be backed up with a tool.
Did that answer your question?
So in reality, on the, whether we do team budget, looking at it monthly, all expenses have your budget to actual. Okay, so we don't have that for the restricted salary. So you're saying that you are working with the developer so that when we look, I'm not saying at the budget period, but month to month, we can manage that. We talk about retention, when we fill a position, all that can be managed. But if we know we don't have a tool that's telling us, hey, here's the amount that you decided, because sometimes that restricted salary, we can go back and forth about what's reasonable for the office based on regulatory requirements for TCAs and filling position, whether we add courtrooms. However, if we don't have a tool to see, are we meeting that on a regular basis, not at budget period? Again, it always happened at budget period. So will that be monthly? Will there be something on the statements, budget to actual, that every month we can see if we're meeting that?
Michael Thompson, Director of Budget and Fiscal Planning. Within Team Budget, on the main screen where you see your budget details, and I'm happy to work with you after this to actually show you the screen. There's a monthly comparison screen. If you were to go to that screen, it'll show your actual spend and your budget, and it'll net it. And it does that for all 12 months. And that screen is in Team Budget right now. That screen does not flow to a report, however. But if that's something that we need to do, I can work with the developers to get that screen to flow to a report. But that screen is there. So for example, if in the month of July, you spent, you had a budget of $500,000 of payroll, and you only spent $200,000, it will show you a net of $300,000. So that screen is there for you all to utilize. And I'm happy to walk you to that screen to assist in these analyses prior to budget season.
Ms. Lindsay.
So I have two questions. Alicia Lindsay, Chief Administrative Officer, Shelby County Sheriff's Office. So if we currently, Director Thompson, if we don't have a tool now that projects what the salary restriction percentage should be, how is it derived?
Michael Thompson, Director of Budget and Fiscal Planning. The salary restriction is something that was built into the system around the time I think that you were in the budget department, CO Lindsay. And the understanding of it is how many authorized positions are within a department's complement. If a department has $1 million of authorized positions, and on an annual basis, at the end of the year, they only spend half of that, then that is a salary savings. And so we look at that historical trend over several years to come up with the percentage that that department has been operating under. So it's based on historical trends of actual versus budgeted payroll spend.
Thank you. I don't recall it being that way, but thank you. Commissioner Chairwoman Clay Bibbs, I have a question regarding the process of budget subcommittees. So we have the listing of the subcommittees, and then you have the proposed budget is to be delivered by April 30th. And on the back of the chart that was handed out, it says budget amendments will be accepted after the delivery of the proposed budget. So I'm a little concerned about what occurs in the budget subcommittees if we don't have a proposed budget. What will we be discussing?
So actually that's more for commissioners because, a lot of times they have particular things they want to add to the budget. So the idea is for commissioners to do a lot of that vetting in our subcommittees. I know you as elected, representative elected, you're thinking about that. But this is also built in for our process, quite honestly, because we're trying not to have 2 a.m., 3 a.m. meetings. But let me be very clear on the schedule. Please reach out to me. It is not set in stone because I am seeing here we may need to build an opportunity between April 30th and June 2nd as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sugarman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so my question comes around team budget, and I was wondering if you had access to view it as well as our accountant, Lynn Johnson, and if not, why not?
Excellent question. I don't have access to that as the budget chair. I am just kind of coming up with processes and making sure things are heard. I think that's more of a question for our chairman.
I don't have access to that.
Okay.
Yeah, Director.
Michael Thompson, Director in Budget and Fiscal Planning. The information contained within team budget is primarily accessed by each department's finance manager, CAO, or finance professional, if you will. It is not normal and customary for everyone to have access to this data, but that is something that can be addressed through commission rules, of course. But in the normal course of business, each department has a CAO, a finance manager, a couple of budget people, and those are the individuals that will have access to team budget. That access is requested through IT, through a process where there are forms that require signatures and authorization to gain access. Anyone, well, I'm not going to say anyone, if that is something that you would like, I recommend that you work with IT to go through the process of gaining access to team budget, and it will be either approved or denied.
Thank you. Clerk Halbert?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Whaley and to the other commissioners, I want to commend you all today. Over the last 6 years, I have been so confused about how this government operates. This meeting today lays out quite a few things that I've never heard, and it is extremely helpful moving forward. And I would respectfully recommend that this become a regular part of what the commission does. When you are a new elected official, we come from different backgrounds. We all have different professional, other kinds of backgrounds. But to walk into an organization and you cannot move from A to Z, and when you go past a year, 2 or 3, that's a challenge. And that's what has been my challenge. I came today thinking this was going to be the normal budget meeting. I am pleasantly surprised that you all are breaking down this process like this, because this is nothing I have ever heard. And it makes absolute sense now. So I just wanted to thank you all. This is not to suggest that everything is going to be perfect, is going to go right, but this should always happen after your elections occur, because this now, we walked in and everyone prior to us was gone. There was no manual, no book, no roadmap, and you had to figure it out. And quite a bit of what is talked about in budget for the Office of the County Clerk's Office, we've never participated in it. And that's been a challenge. So I just wanted to personally thank you all for putting this session together, and I hope you continue it so that our office doesn't intentionally or otherwise walk in a direction that it is not supposed to, but that goes for the entire Shelby County. This is nothing that I have ever been told, ever seen, and I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Looking at technically, we are finished. So this is exciting for me to being able to give some time back. But more importantly, I think a lot of great questions were asked. A lot of great statements were made. So thank you for showing up this Saturday in order for us to go through this process and this timeline. At this point, we'll just say that if you have any additional questions about the process and timeline, please reach out to me via email or, those of you who have my number, text me. Then that way we can be very clear on how we're moving forward. And for sure want to allow Chairman Whaley to close us out.
All right. So, thanks again, everyone, for being a part of this, and really just appreciate everyone's support as we embark on this new process that I hope gives us the structure we need to make the decisions that are best for Shelby County. And again, I don't want to set the expectation that it's going to be, all fame and glory here, but there'll be some hard moments. We'll disagree. But that's okay as long as we're working from the same set of facts and the same understanding. So that's where I'm hoping we get to. So appreciate the leadership of Budget Chair Clay Bibbs. There of course will be more detail about what will be discussed at each subcommittee as we get to it. So, in some of these we'll have presentations from elected officials around, let's say, the revenue forecasts. We'll debate the compensation study. I think we already know when that's coming. But we'll ensure that we're clear about what the agenda topics are, or if there are any particular items that are being debated in these subcommittees, that everyone is well aware of that in advance. So again, just want to thank Commissioner Wright. You have a...
Well, I'm sorry. I know you're trying to wrap up. There was a question earlier from Chief Lindsay about what are we doing in these meetings before we get the prepared or the consolidated proposed budget. And I would assume, it's not stated specifically and we haven't spoken to it, but I would assume that in those meetings, we're hearing from the departments also with their proposed budgets in advance of it being consolidated.
Yes, correct. That is, I hate to say the word assumption, but that is the best understanding as well. And that will have a schedule as well. And also, again, going back to commissioners who have particular amendments and other projects that they want to invest in, getting all of that vetted before it makes it to Budget Committee.
And so we may pick one of those dates when a particular department would be asked to present.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Yeah, and it also can be commission-driven. So, if there's, and it could be an entity that is within our current budget that we anticipate keeping in the budget. I mean, that's the chance to have them come and explain the outcomes of their work, and, make a pitch, per se, of being included in the budget once it's presented to us. And at that point, we're now, once we have the budget in hand, we're taking action on the budget. So those subcommittees become quite a bit more important in terms of action toward adopting the budget. And so there are currently, I think, 2 subcommittees that are scheduled before the proposed adoption on June 2nd. Of course, there can be additional ones added before or after that, depending on where we are. But the idea is that that budget is fully solidified before it gets sent to commission to be adopted. Right? We should not have sort of back of the envelope amendments happening at commission meetings in the middle of the night. Right? That is not what I'm looking to preside over. So it's going to happen in these budget subcommittees.
If I may as well, Chairman, that will actually help solve the question or comment from CEO Lindsay. Those last minute amendments takes time to run through the budget, and that's a challenge. So the more in advance, I think everyone can leave that night understanding where their budget will be.
That's right. And I think when, at these early meetings, when we have the sheriff's office, whoever come, like that is your opportunity also to reiterate some of these issues around salary restrictions early on, so that by the time the proposed budget is proposed and we have those few subcommittees to amend it, we are super clear about what needs to happen or what you're requesting, right? That's the idea, okay?
CAO Joyner.
Michael Burnett Joyner, CAO, Circuit Court Clerk's Office. Just a clarification. So is this the expectation from the various electeds that this is the first stop, these subcommittees that we're talking about? First stop with our budget? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Well, with that, again, thanks for everyone for your participation. You know, it's certainly a marathon here with this, but hopefully we can make the process a little better each time. And thanks again. All right, we'll see some of y'all on Monday. 90 items.
Yes.
This meeting's adjourned.